Hello, everyone. Once again, this is Man Alone, and I am a man alone. And you can call me Malone. It's not my name, but I think that would be great. Anyways, today we're talking Star Trek Adventures, Captain's Log solo role playing game, which has been released recently, as of September 2023, when this was recorded, by Modifius Entertainment, which is great because Modifius makes some great games, and so that's a good thing that they're making a game in the solo genre. Taking a look at the back, boldly go where no one has gone before. And if you want to see many no ones going boldly to places no one has gone before, take a look at all the no ones going boldly on all of Star Trek's 9 million television episodes, the original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, Voyager, Picard, the animated series, and some other ones that happened after I stopped watching. By the way, Star Trek is licensed to CBS Studios and Paramount Pictures. I have nothing to do with it. I don't know if that's necessary. Let me know in the comments. But clearly, I have nothing to do with creating Star Trek. Let's see what's out there. Engage. Jean-Luc Picard. Let's do it. So, we're going to do more than talk about Star Trek Adventures over the next few episodes. We are actually going to play it. We're going to roll up a character in episode 0, and we're going to start playing in episode 1. So that's the good news, right? The medium okay news is that we're not playing yet. We're not in episode 1 yet, and I know I read the comments and other videos of these playthroughs. Y'all want to see some gameplay, and I get it, okay? And we're going to get there very soon. There's lots of episode 0 videos, all right? So this one, here comes the really bad news. This is actually an episode 00 video. And what that means is we're going to start with the character roll-up and playthrough very soon. But this one is going to talk about what the hell the title of this video means, okay? So before I do that, very briefly, I'm just going to kind of explain some major features of this game, and I'm going to review. Then I'm going to do a very brief review of this book, and then we'll talk about what the title of this video means, okay? So there was no part of me that thought that I was going to be choosing this book for my first playthrough. I purchased it, and I looked through it, and I thought it had a lot of promise for reasons I'll let you know. And then it just kind of sat on my shelf. Why is that? Who knows? How is it here now? How is this the first book that I'm going to be playing through? Oh, all this and more. Stay till the very end of the video, the last second of it. So this game is a solo role-playing version of Star Trek Adventures, which is a like TTRPG, right? And the most important part, let's look right here. Let's see if this old trick works, this old dog. This is a standalone product. That's the most important thing here, is that this is a standalone product. You don't need Star Trek Adventures. This book does it on its own. It was roughly $37, I think, at my friendly local game store. And this is all you need. So I'm sure that maybe buying the Star Trek Adventures RPG would be illuminating, but it's not necessary. Quality wise, this is a great book. This is the kind of thing that blows me away sometimes about RPG books. Is you have a book like this, beautiful, dense, heavy, well-made, wonderful binding. You got your little book ribbon, placeholder ribbon here, glossy, heavy pages, nice setup, wonderful illustrations, $37. And then there's some RPGs that are 6 pages written on like an index card, and they're $45. And no hate on that. And making an indie game, I'm in the process of that. It's obviously it's a whole different thing, but it does cause you to scratch your head sometimes. Like what are you paying for? And I guess you're paying for the ideas, and also probably there's like an economy of scale involved in this because it's Star Trek, and so they can afford lower margins. Like I said, this is some awesome illustrations in here. A lot of them get taken directly from the series, or some of them are actually like reanimations or redrawings of stuff in the series. Just really nice looking stuff here. Uh, Quotes all over the place. I think this gives like a really good overview of the Star Trek universe. It's going to lay out like the basic technology of it. It's going to talk about what society looks like, the main values of the show, the economy, religion, spirituality, all of this stuff, language. And so that if you don't know much about Star Trek, you can read this and be like, oh, cool. Like I have enough here to play with. And that's really good because one of the reasons I don't normally role play with like existing IPs is that when you have an existing IP, I feel boxed in by the logic of that world. I feel like that universe, I have to sort of yield to the history of it, the logic of it, the characters of it, the rules of it, etc. And that's going to come into play in the later part of this video about what I do about this. But just saying, I think if you're gonna have people playing inside of an established universe, to give an overview like this and really hit the sweet spot, right? Because if you were to put 600 pages about Star Trek, nobody would read that. And if you were to do 600 letters about it, that's just not enough, right? And so I think that the authors of this book did an incredible job being succinct. They really capture a lot of stuff. And in fact, succinct, I would say, is the theme of the book overall and what I like about it. And I'll talk about how form follows function a little bit in the gameplay. But just to show a little bit more about what this has here, lots of glossaries with different definitions for the lingo. They have stuff like for like techno babble. I don't want to get like I'm having a harder time tonight, like for this thing focusing. I don't know what the deal with that is, but I'm trying to record it. Like my phone is hooked up into my computer. I know I need to get a better camera, but it's okay for now. It gives kind of the different time spans of it and a brief look at the history. And then it has this section, which is different styles of play. And you could do an Admiralty campaign, a cinematic style, something close to home, season-long story arcs, deep space exploration. You can play as different characters. Obviously, it's a captain's log, so that's the one that a lot of people would think of, but you don't have to be in that position. You could be an admiral, you could be a grunt, you could even be another sort of faction, although that, I think the book gives a little bit of info on that, but it seems mostly geared towards playing as part of Starfleet. Okay, so the way that this goes is you're going to create a character, all right, and it has lots of wonderful oracles, but first you're going to establish your stats, your traits and your attributes, which they have divided as control, daring, fitness, insight, presence, and reason. And so we'll come back to these. And then there's disciplines. So this is more or less like the things that you're individually skilled at: command, con, engineering, science, medicine. And then within each of those, they have different like focuses, right? That you are especially good at, that you can roll on these tables. Lots of good oracles. This book just packs so much in such little space. It's really wonderful. And so you then have your values, and once per like playthrough, your values should come into a little bit of conflict. You're going to create a life path for your character. And this right here is really the creme de la crop of this book, is that you have so many good flow charts. Flow charts are so key while you are solo role playing, because you want to be able to follow something from start to end. And in fact, I want to show you something right now. Let's see. On 239, this is the core game loop. Let me tell you something. If you got a solo game that doesn't have a core game loop, that's either written or even better in a diagram like this, take that game, throw it in the trash. I stand by that. Throw it away, okay? Because especially in solo play, you're going to have these times where you create a character, you get out there, you have a random conversation with an NPC, you say, hey, I'm doing it, I'm solo role-playing, this is great. And all of a sudden you go, what the hell am I supposed to do next, right? And you can't figure it out. You need to have this core game loop that you can always reorient yourself to, because you got no one else at the table to sort of, spray the proverbial air freshener onto the proverbial brain fart of yours, okay? And so you need to be able to reorient yourself to those things. So these flowcharts are gold. And this is character setup. Pretty interesting way of doing this. You get different points based on your species and your upbringing. And then the game itself, one of the things that was most excited about when I picked this up was, if you watched my last video, I talked about how I really want to get into journaling games, but it's hard for me because I write so much at work and then I get home and I write. And this is one thing I didn't say that is also a big piece of this, is like, I have been, you know how some people are journalers, lifelong journalers, and some people aren't. I'm a lifelong non-journaler who is also a lifelong wants to be a journaler. Like, I don't know if anyone watching resonates with this. I have like 63 journals with one entry in it. And I'm like, really going to do it this time? Or like, I'm so depressed, or whatever it is. And then I'm like, forget it. I don't want to do that again. I'm busy. I've got to play Nintendo Switch and eat Pringles. But this has this journaling component to it in the form of the captain's log, right? So in addition to writing a lot at work, writing when I get home, not being able to journal, to like sit and go, oh, I'm going to journal some fictional character's life for 3 hours tonight. That's just a really hard ask at the end of the night. And so what I like about Star Trek, about this game, but about Star Trek in general, is it has the captain's log, which creates the structure in a really nice way, puts some really useful constraints on the journaling piece of this. So if you've seen an episode of Star Trek, you have the captain's log. I'm just going to kind of do this kind of zoom this time. And, this is the basic length of it. Stardate 4218.6. We're currently patrolling or leaving the roll random location after completing insert last mission, and now headed to random location for new mission, etc. And so that's great. That's, if you think about an episode of Star Trek, like the Next Generation or something, is what, 30 minutes, and then it had some commercials. Maybe it was an hour. I can't remember, but let's just say it was a half hour. 30 minutes with commercials, maybe 23. The captain's logs at the beginning and the end of the episode, these voiceovers, they were maybe a minute, usually less, maybe a little bit more. But this is really good as a template for journaling, because you just have to think about those and know like what the range is of acceptability. If you've played any other journaling RPGs, or even if you've played Starforged, sometimes you'll write and you start to have this weird shame, or this weird internal mechanic where you go, am I writing too much? Am I not writing enough? Am I getting the full experience out of this? Which is absurd, right? It's absurd because you're doing this for yourself. But at the same time, it's not absurd because you have questions of like, how much detail should I be including? What am I going to need to know for next time I pick up this game? What if I don't pick it up for 2 weeks? How am I going to write enough to remember what I was doing, etc.? And so the captain's log provides like a really great answer to that, okay? And then additionally, just the way that Star Trek stories are set up, whether it's movies or TV, they're usually 3 acts, right? There's the rising action, there's the climax, there's the resolution, and then at the end you have another captain's log. And that's generally how this game is structured. But in addition to that, there's some light role-playing in between there, right? So in addition, Modifius, it's the 2d20 system. And so we're going to be rolling 2d20, no problem, right? And it's a pretty simple system, but I like it. It's taught. And the system is, if you look at the character sheet here, you have, these attributes and disciplines, and here's like a sample. So you just like add the attribute score. Say we have control, and we're going to add it to, so say that the activity that we're trying to roll on is like diffusing a bomb. So we would do like control. We're going to need control because that's self-discipline. And then we're going to need like engineering because, it's disarming a bomb, right? So 10 plus 2 is 12. So we roll the 2d20. And as long as we don't have disadvantage or anything, we're going to look at both of those die and say, okay, I rolled a 9 and a 15. At least one of them is under it. So I was successful. And so if I was very successful, say I rolled like a 1, I can get sort of some momentum. Hey all, it's me. Sorry for this brief interruption, but my phone just stopped recording, so I had to stop and start it again. So there's going to be a weird little cut in here, and I'm so sorry, but we're all going to make it together. Ready? 3, 2, good luck. Okay, sorry about that. A little interruption. My camera just stopped recording. So I was talking about momentum. And in the Star Trek Adventures regular role-playing game, momentum is, something that you can accumulate. But in this one, you either have it or you don't, and then you can use it to like re-roll dice or to like give yourself a little bit of an advantage in a situation, etc. And then threats work similarly. When you have like a really poor roll, you can get a threat, which would then cause you, like a twist inside the action when you're trying to accomplish a task. And in fact, in the back of the book, well, not really the back, but 268, yeah. There's this list of advantages and complications as well, where you roll a d20 on this table, and say you had a really good roll, maybe something great happens. Okay, you have a chance encounter, an old ally shows up, and they're a specialist, and they help you out or whatever it is, and then if you roll really poorly, really below what you were looking for, you could have a complication. You roll a 2, you have inferior equipment. Complications arise due to poorly maintained gear and not having the right equipment readily available. And so, this is just like to be honest, it's kind of a more compact version of Starforged. And I know in the last video I said that I boldly went where no one has gone before, saying that Starforged was a good solo RPG to start with. I don't want to walk that back necessarily. I think it's fine, especially if you've played RPGs before. But one of the pieces that can be overwhelming about it is that it's not a journaling game, but it does require it could require a lot of writing in terms of capturing what it is that happened in a certain place at a certain time, so that if you pick the game up again, you know where you are from that point on. And then combined with that, there's not heavy role playing in Starforge. There's not too much crunch. In fact, there are some areas where I think it could get a little crunchier. But it's definitely more than this, right? This has a pretty simple system. And so for this reason, it's like this game is just it's just a great combination of this journaling and this RPG play, right? And we have this very tight game loop. We have lots of oracles. We have very good animation. We have probability tables where we can look to see, this is a yes or no probability index that we can roll on when we're uncertain whether or not something, like say we're doing the captain's log and we're approaching a planet and we're like, how probable is it that there is intelligent life there? You might roll on that table and get somewhat improbable, and then we arrive and maybe there's a twist from there, right? So yeah, this is great, right? I mean, good animations, really good writing, really succinct, clear game loop, lots of oracles, 2 mechanics of journaling and the RPGing that are both immersive but not overwhelming. It's almost a home run, right? It's almost a home run in terms of what I was looking for. And so I got this game, and I got home, I read it, put it back on my shelf, and it sat there. And I could not get myself to play this game. I could not get myself to play this game. And I cannot figure out why. I could not figure out why. It had almost everything that I was looking for, but there was something in me that could not pull this from the shelf, right? And like I said in the last video, just in terms of like journaling and not wanting to spend that time journaling somebody, fictional character's life, I I even with this, with the more abridged journaling, I was willing to do that. I was willing to play the RPG. I was willing to immerse myself in an IP, even though that's not my usual jam. And I couldn't do it. And what was it? I couldn't figure it out. And then I said, I can't believe this. I love Star Trek. What's my problem? And it was right there. It was right there that I figured it out when I said, I love Star Trek. Because I do love Star Trek. But I love Star Trek like I love being hydrated. I love Star Trek like I love, getting updates on my niece's softball season, high school softball season. Like, I'm happy that she's doing well, but I don't necessarily jump for joy if she got an RBI, right? And so Star Trek, I love it, and also it kind of sucks, right? Like, I say that lovingly, right? Like Star Trek, when I was young and all my friends were watching silly cartoons and everything, with animations with guys with eyeballs falling out of their heads and stuff, I was watching Star Trek. I was watching arguments over the Prime Directive. I was watching people play 3D chess. I was watching people have arguments versus beneficence and autonomy, and projecting hypotheticals into the future, and watching people get addicted to the holodeck, and having, this feeling of, relating to these people like 3000 in the year 3200, saying, wow, it's like humanity still has so much in common, and the resonance of that, and arguing about these like impossible mathematical and scientific formulas. I love it. And also, it kind of sucks. And I didn't want to immerse myself in this universe, because I think the thing that's so great about Star Trek is its banality. Is the fact that, like, it's extremely relatable. Sometimes it's almost like watching The West Wing in space. My God, especially Deep Space Nine. And so I just was like, I don't want to do that. I want to do something that allows me to escape, right? And Star Trek just seems altogether too pleasant. So that when I was looking through my shelf to figure out which game I wanted to do for my first solo series, I saw this and I like snickered, because I was like, no. And then I got a little bit devious, because I thought to myself, I do love this system. I love the approach of this book. I love the mechanics. I want to try the journaling for this. I don't want to play Star Trek. Big deal. Maybe I can combine it with something else. Something a little bit less realistic. And when I say less realistic, I mean Crusaders in the year 40,000 hacking apart aliens with a broadsword with a gigantic candelabra Aquila statue on their back. And so I thought to myself, what if I could take the structure of this and just add this? Just add 40k. And okay, so I said, well, how the hell am I going to do this? And so this is what this episode is about, right? Because, I mean, come on, look at Star Trek here. Like this stuff's great, but let's just do a comparison. Let's take a look at this picture right here. Okay, it's like let's think about role playing this. Okay, cool. So like, this guy sees something and he says, "What?" And then this woman's like, "Yeah, right. Look, right over there." And this guy's like, "What? I don't see it." And then she's like, "Yeah, it was me. I did it." Wow. The intrigue. I am totally captivated. Let's compare that to an animation from Warhammer. Okay, here is a pile of soldiers rushing into battle with a priest from the ecclesiarchy yelling at them with a war eagle flying overhead and a battle barge firing missiles about 10 feet above the ground. Holy shit, does that rule? I mean, are you kidding me? Like, compared to this, here's just like a couple cathedral spaceships blowing up a planet. And don't worry, in case you're bored by this stuff, here's some demon octopi in the corners here to also keep you occupied. Oh, hey, cool, there's like a replicator. Well, what about whatever the hell this thing is with like tiny flying stitched babies and some guy who attached 43 tentacles to his body? So, my dear friends, what I'm going to attempt to do is elide both of these things. I'm going to take the structure and the function of this, and I'm going to add Warhammer 40k. And here's my little Abaddon the Despoiler. I don't play the tabletop game necessarily. I'm super invested in the lore. I also like to paint and build these. I'm not very good at painting, but I love it's very relaxing. I get to paint all these little pieces. Look at that. He's crushing a space marine under his foot. Abaddon rules. So this is what we're going to try to do, okay? We're going to try to roll up a character and play through a mission, not as a captain of Starfleet, but as maybe someone from the Imperium, all right? And so obviously I had to make some changes. And as I tried to figure out how I was going to do this, let me actually bring up some tables that I did. I started converting some of the oracles in this game, and in a lot of ways, a lot of them really work really work well together. So like, and they're not always perfect, but for instance, look at this one in Star Trek: The Aspirations. Okay, what if I roll my aspirations to explore? Well, the aspiration of Warhammer would be to reunite humanity. Okay, do I want to discover? Well, sure, but what does that equal if I rolled that on an oracle, what would that equal in Warhammer? Well, I'd want to scour the galaxy of filthy Xenos. And so it does not work perfectly, but that's okay because really, as I was looking through more and more of these oracles, I realized that some of these I can kind of make comparison oracles for, and some of them, as the stuff comes up, I'll just like on the fly convert whatever it is that I read to the best of my ability into Warhammer. And during character creation and mission creation and stuff, there might have to be some times where like I refer to like a Warhammer resource. I'll try to do that off camera and more or less just sort of create the skeleton of it. But once we get into the gameplay of it, substituting Warhammer's, sort of ideals, you can call them that, and values and how that world is built and how it's not built on hope, but instead on the grim darkness of the far future in which there is only war. But I'll use the same system. I'll use the same sort of captain's log approach to it. And then whenever anything comes up that I roll, if it doesn't, as much as is able, I will fit it to Warhammer. And if not, we'll just kind of modify it, right? So even here, like where I'm rolling for species, I could try to convert all of these species to Warhammer, but really there's like 8 or 9 species in Warhammer that matter. And so what I can do instead is when I roll on this table, I can just kind of try to figure out the closest thing. Okay, case in point, right? Let's look at the Anar. The Anar, the Anar were a subspecies of Andorians who were on the verge of extinction by the mid 22nd century. Okay, well, what does that remind you of? That's Eldari, right? Maybe. Their most distinctive trait was telepathic abilities. Yep, those are psychers, which included reading minds and physically projecting themselves. Great, that one works really well. The Ardana natives are hardy. They have a duality of art and culture, and resource mining management make them all-rounders. Hey, maybe that's kind of like the Leagues of Votann. Or maybe I get to something that doesn't fit the species at all. And then I could just take what I can take from that and throw out the rest. Because if it doesn't fit perfectly, who gives a shit? We're trying to have fun. We're going to have fun here, right? And I know that this is one of the biggest hurdles we have to get over in solo RPGs, where we're like, oh man, I don't know if I'm playing this like true to how it was meant to being played. Bro, you're sitting alone in a room. How it meant to be played is however is the most fun for you, right? You'll have this sometimes as you're playing. You'll have these beats where you go, I think I made that task too easy for myself. Okay, we'll go back and do it again and change it and make it harder. Or take the note, learn the lesson, and apply it next time, right? Because there's no referee, right? The trick is, it's not about, we're not running up a high score on Donkey Kong arcade game, right? The goal of this is to play, it's to imagine, it's to explore, and it's to get as close to the real as possible. But if the real includes you getting blown up on your ship 5 seconds after the campaign starts, well, that's not very fun. So we want it to be real, and we want it to be real fun. Okay? And so what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try to map the stats over. Even the stats I think are going to work okay here. Just tweaking them just a little bit though. So for instance, like presence, in this, presence would be something closer to charisma, but maybe I could make that like psyker powers, right? Maybe instead of Starfleet, I'm in the Schola Progenium. Maybe it was really funny actually. As I was converting some of this stuff, I had to say like, okay, well, the Star Wars equivalent, or sorry, Star Wars. I'm sorry, by the way, if I said Star Wars at any time during this video. I'm sure I'll make fun of myself with my own captions, but the Star Trek equivalent of stuff. I was trying to find out like the technological equivalent of things. Like, okay, the communicator or the comm badge, what would that be in Warhammer? Okay, that's a Vox. All right, what's a tricorder or a hand scanner in Warhammer? Oh, that's the Auspex, right? What's a phaser? Well, that's a las rifle or a bolt pistol or whatever it is. And then I got to certain things, and I was like, hey, what's comparable to the holodeck? And I was like, no, dude, that's heresy. Like if you told somebody that you used a holodeck to take a vacation, you would be burned to death by a flamethrower, right? And so we're going to have to edit some of those things, like technology and science really kind of in Warhammer 40k like reaches its limit. You're not allowed to do that anymore. That's tech heresy, right? And so I think this is going to be fun though. Like I'm not going to say I'm worried about it. I'm not worried about it, but I'm eager to see how well I can fit some of these things around it and how seamlessly I can do it. And I want to try to not get bogged down too much if I'm going, oh man, what is that faction in Warhammer? Who exactly is that? And what's the history on that? Because instead it'll be good for me to just play through. And then after that, I can either like throw in like an edit, or I can write something up on the screen, or the next time I play, I could just sort of retcon that to whatever it is. But so much in this book is gonna work, right? There's so much in here that's very easily going to translate over to any science fiction environment. Like we were talking about those complications and disadvantages. Okay, maybe or maybe your life path formation. One of those on there, I can't find it right now, but in this book it says, "Oh, you lost an old friend." Well, I mean, how many people lost an old friend in Warhammer? Everyone, all 6 trillion humans, right? Next episode, we're going to roll up a character. I'm going to do a little bit more thinking about how I'm going to do this. Right now, I'm thinking that there are certain characters where I probably will have a harder time playing them than others. I'm sure I could figure out a way to be like an Adeptus Custodes, but I don't know how much role playing I could do of like, okay, I get to the end of the hall in the Imperial Palace. Okay, I turn around and walk down again. Okay, 500 years passes. So I'm going to have to figure out like the best in point to that. and then we'll figure out, what kind of customizations we could do, modifications. Same thing with ships. I know like a couple different names of ships in Warhammer: the Gloriana class, the Luna class, etc., the Arcs, the Barge. But at the same time, if we're gonna roll on, for instance, roll on this like ship picking system here, I'm not gonna necessarily know like which ship from Star Trek most closely resembles the ship from Warhammer. So I'll probably have to look that up and do a little bit of research, and that's okay. Or we can just kind of fudge it. And I'm going to kind of, you know what? I'm not even getting carried away, because there's something in this book that says, hey, you could have it take place in the original series or the next generation, or hey, maybe even further into the future, make up your own thing. And I'm like, okay, how about the year 40,000? How about the 41st millennium? So that's the plan. So as soon as I can, I'm going to hit the recorder again for another session 0 after I figure out why this camera keeps just stopping in the middle of recording. We'll roll up a character, and then very soon after that, we'll do the first session, because I don't want people to be mad at me. I want everybody to be nice and kind and having fun. We're going to figure out how to do this. It might work. It might be a disaster. Who cares? Either way, it is something to do. Okay? So we're going to have something to do. We're going to do some captain's logs, and we're just going to do them 40k style. So please join along with me as we do Warhammer Trek captain's log. Maybe it's captain. We'll have to figure out what the equivalent of the captain is. Castellan's log. Warhammer Trek Castellan's log. Okay. I also have nothing to do with Games Workshop. See you soon.